and welcome to this episode of the Biology of Trauma podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Aimie. Today, we're diving into a deeply moving story about how a single moment can shape the entire course of a life. My guest, Gregg Ward, shares his experience of surviving a car accident at 18 years old, but one that took the life of his high school sweetheart. An event that became a defining moment in his life and shaped everything that followed. In this episode, you'll hear how trauma can live in the body for decades, the concept of moral injury, and you'll learn about the different stages of healing, from the initial emotional shutdown to channeling grief into purpose, and finally, the healing power of finding community. Whether you can relate to this story, or maybe you work with those who've also had a life-changing moment, this episode offers guidance toward hope, healing, and finding joy again. Let's dive in.
What I'd like to share with everyone is that I had an extremely traumatic accident when I was 18 years old, which I can without question say completely impacted my entire life. And in a way was the driving force to all the different things I've been trying to do in the world. And the struggles that I had, the challenges I had, the research that I did, all of it is in a way centered on this event. And it's informed everything I do, how I behave, how I treat people. I can say without question that this was a seminal moment in my life.
And that has led you to a lot of lessons through a lot of years of being caught in sorrow, grief, regret, shame, all of that. Your body held on to all of that. So to the degree that you feel comfortable, let's explore some of that. It sounds like from your description, the physical injuries were not the most hurtful coming out of that accident for you. It was the injuries to your heart, to your soul, or however you want to describe your body experiencing these emotions that it held on to. Those seem like they were the most challenging injuries to overcome and repair from afterwards.
Yes, very much so. So the facts are simple. I was driving home late one night with my high school sweetheart, and I went off the road because I was paying more attention to her than to my driving, and I hit a telephone pole and she was killed. I was not injured badly at all. The first moments afterwards are very much a blur. I do recall the absolute shock and agony, screaming, carrying on, running around in the dark. It feels, even though it was 46 years ago, it feels like it was yesterday, and it still very much lives in my body. One of the things I wanted to share with all of you was the next morning I went home and my parents had given me a very strong sleeping pill. And I woke up, and for just a split second, I didn't know where I was or if anything had happened. Then it literally hit me. It felt like being hit in the face with a baseball bat. And it was that much of an overwhelming sensation. And so, oddly enough, and I'm not a runner. I'm not a runner at all. I don't like long distance running. I threw on my sneakers and I literally went running out of the house, and I ran and I ran and I ran as hard as I possibly could. And if I wasn't running, I was walking. I was doing everything I could to kind of overwhelm my physical feelings with the agony of running, of just doing something that would take all of my attention so that I could at least cope in the moment. And I did that the whole summer long. Every day I would go running. And the first few months were extremely difficult to cope, to function. I was very fortunate. My family rallied around me. I went to see a classic Freudian therapist who was really no help at all, to be honest with you. Although he too kind of hit me in the face with a baseball bat when I asked him in the very first visit on the day after the accident. I said, how long am I going to feel this way? Overwhelmed, sorrow, guilt, grief, shame, fury, everything. How long? He said very matter of factly, oh, 2 years. And to an 18-year-old, 2 years is a lifetime. But in a way, he was right. I don't really feel like I got anywhere close to normal behavior, normal function for about 2 years. I was really fortunate is about 3 to 4 months after the accident, I went away to theater school. I went to Boston University College of Fine Arts. And in theater school, what are they teaching us to do? To allow our emotions to come out. And I kind of sarcastically joke that theater school was the most effective and most expensive therapy that I could ever get because my classmates, some of them were famous actors like Julianne Moore and Jason Alexander, totally got me right from the beginning, totally understood. There were only about 40 of us, and we all came together and they rallied behind me. And so it was an extraordinarily powerful and helpful experience to be in theater school. The accident, in a way, completely upended me and yet also completely focused me.
And as you're describing the 2 years that it just kind of turned you upside down, I'm reminded of the words of Bessel van der Kolk describing what constitutes a trauma. And he uses the word, it's something that is unbelievable. You can't believe what has happened. It's unbearable. It hits you like a bat. And then it's just overwhelming. The amount of emotions that it brings up is overwhelming, where you feel the need, the survival need to avoid, to distract, to numb, to quiet that down just to be able to not go insane and not go crazy.
Yes, that's beautifully put. That's exactly how I felt. I will tell you this, that I never ideated suicide, but I misused alcohol and drugs to the nth degree to numb myself, to escape. It was bad. It was not, fortunately, I did not ever become addicted to anything. And I assume I don't have the so-called addictive personality. I don't know. But I was very, very bad throughout college. I was just abusing them left, right, and center. The reason I brought up not ideating suicide is because while I was sitting in the police car, while they cleaned up the accident in the middle of the night, I was sitting in the back seat by myself. They let me know they were not going to arrest me. They let me know that it looked like an accident to them, which it was. It was mostly carelessness on my part. I was not paying attention. And there was this voice in my head. And it was definitely my voice. And it was very, very clearly saying, okay, you've got a choice. You either let this completely destroy you, or you figure out a way to get through this and become a better person than Michelle, that's my girlfriend who died, ever thought I could be. And so that was ringing in my head the whole night and afterwards. And so it's in a way been ringing in my head for 46 years. That's why I say it helped me to focus everything that I've done. And I've had many different careers. I've been a journalist. I've worked in theater as a professional, both in New York and in London. I'm an executive coach. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. My father was an author. I do all these things, as I said in my TEDx talk, to try to make a powerful difference in the world. But it was when I started researching moral injury that I really began to understand where I was in all of this.
Tell us more about moral injury, because I'm not sure that everyone here understands or is familiar with that term.
I'm just playing at the surface of understanding it. I'm not a psychologist. I don't, have deep knowledge of it, but here's how I get moral injury. It's where we have acted either consciously or unconsciously or done something in a way that completely violates our own personal moral code of ethics, of values, or what have you. And we either did that consciously, we made a choice, or it was unconscious. And in my case, I unconsciously broke the rule, thou shalt not kill, least of all your high school sweetheart.
And so, Greg, you had mentioned that even though those 2 years, I mean, really kind of threw you for a loop, it also was a time for you to focus.
Yes.
And was that focus because of that voice that you had heard in the backseat of the police car, or was that a different reason for the focus?
It really was the voice, my voice, speaking on behalf of Michelle. I think I now understand what I was trying to do was be a good person and do good things as a way of making up for the life that I took. Michelle was already at age 17 a very accomplished artist and dancer and musician. She was going to train to become an artist herself. So I felt extraordinarily responsible for the loss of her talent and her presence and her being in the world. And I felt, okay, I have to do whatever I can to make up for that. I have to work overtime. I have to be the best I can be at everything that I put my hand to, and everything I put my hand to. Like I've written plays, films, written a book. It's all about helping the world be better. Well, what I came to eventually understand is I call it a kind of unconscious lack of authenticity. Really, a lot of what I was doing, what I was focused on, all this good stuff, was proving to myself that I was an okay human being, that I was not this horrible, horrible murderer, and also trying to prove to others that I was a good guy. Even if they didn't know my story, they would always walk away from an encounter with me. That was my drive, saying, oh, he's a good guy, he's here to help, he's here to support. And that's been the driving force through much of my life. And then I realized, as I studied moral injury, I realized that I was being inauthentic, that I was trying to make myself feel better by doing all this good stuff. And sure, the good stuff was good on its own, but it was just a lot of it was sort of self-serving, if I don't know how else to put it. And eventually I came to a realization, and this was part of my research where this came from, that if I was able to make a difference in the world, a positive difference in the world, in the way that Michelle would have if she had lived, or would have wanted me to do if she could have told me, then all of the good that I was choosing to do in the world would be about honoring her and what she could have been, rather than trying to make myself feel better about me or proving to others that I'm a good guy. And it was at that point, probably about 7 years ago, that I created an arts scholarship in her name at our high school. And every year, I and her friends contribute to the scholarship. Her parents have contributed to this scholarship. And the idea is that every year, a young woman who is intending on having a professional career in the arts is awarded $1,000 or sometimes a little bit more towards her education in the arts. And the goal is to essentially carry on Michelle's work.
Makes a lot of sense, Greg, and kind of am struck then at the impact that this moment had for you, Greg, right? Coming from a great childhood, coming from parents who told you all of the things that lifted you up, and then how significant then this experience was to accidentally take the life of someone else, and how hard, how deeply that hits a person, that it would make them question, am I even a good person, when that's been the opposite of the message that they've been given their whole life. Speaking now to the impact that one experience can have on you. Over the years, over the decades, do you recall the impact on your body?
Yes, thank you for that question. The way my body held the impact is I cry at the drop of a hat. I cry all the time. I'm in sorrow for what happened to me. There's a part of me that says you're not allowed to be sorrowful for yourself, because you were responsible. So physically, I'm extremely sensitive, not only when people treat me. Is it any wonder I founded the Center for Respectful Leadership? When people treat me with respect, I react very badly. But what really bothers me is when they treat others with disrespect. That sends me off a cliff because I know what it feels like to be disrespected. I know what it feels like to disrespect myself. So I get very, very upset. It's very hard to control myself. I get flushed. I cry, I get angry. I don't think I was that way before the accident. I don't think so. I was always a sensitive person, but I don't think I was so easily triggered by disrespect, by treating others badly or treating me badly. I don't think I was. At the end of the day, like even now, I can still, as soon as we started you asking me about it, I can feel the tension in my shoulders, my face flushed. I felt like I was going to cry. It's always there, always, always there.
I find it interesting that you mentioned that you were already a sensitive person before the
Yes.
accident. And how did that kind of affect your response to that experience, or even the degree of overwhelm that you experienced? I don't know if, how many other people you've met who had a similar experience of you, where maybe they've described something different, that their reaction was a little different coming out of that experience, that would make sense that a sensitive person might have a different experience than someone who was not as sensitive going into that type of experience.
That's a great question. One of the best things that could have happened to me is I was reading, I think, an article in the New Yorker magazine about the founder of what at that time was called Accidental Impacts, which was just a group of people who, like me, had accidentally killed someone. And she eventually went and did a TED talk about it. It is now called the Hyacinth Fellowship. And the Hyacinth Fellowship, I happened upon them about the same time as I was starting to do my research in moral injury and learn more about people like me. And eventually I attended their first annual in-person uh, summit or conference where about 20 of us came together in Detroit. And what was so amazing is literally within a matter of the very first thing we did, we sat in a circle and we all basically shared who we were and what our story was. And it was like I was with long lost family. Everyone completely different walks of life, jobs, ages. There was someone there in their late 70s, someone as young as in their early 20s, and from all walks of life. And yet we all instantly got each other. We instantly understood exactly where we were. And it was such a healing experience. And so, if any of you have had a similar experience and have been an accidental killer like me, I cannot recommend the Hyacinth Fellowship enough. It is so helpful. And they have monthly meetings and so on. But to specifically answer your question, I met people there. Some of them had kind of emotionally shut down, just became unattainable, unreachable emotionally. They kind of went through their lives just kind of doing their jobs and just keeping their heads down and not ever really addressing the issue in any way, shape, or form. But they had the courage to come to this meeting. And that was extraordinary. And for many of them, they had breakthroughs there. I wouldn't say I had a breakthrough there. I would say that I found lifelong friends. I found people that I can completely identify with. But many of them, this was the first time they'd been sort of public about what had happened to them. Now, I wasn't public either until I did my TEDx talk just in February. But I did tell some close colleagues and of course my family and close friends. For many of them, they just completely shut it down. They put it in a box, didn't talk about it. I think a lot of that was shame, and perhaps you would understand a lot more about the psychology of it. A lot of them felt deep shame and guilt. I was definitely filled with guilt, less so with shame, a lot of regret. So shutting down was one of the big ones. Another one was like me, kind of they shifted their entire where they thought they were going to go with their lives. They shifted in a new direction. And quite a few of them really want to help others like us. They become mentors and lay counselors and lay therapists for those who are still processing. So a lot of them are channeling that energy towards helping people like us.
Those are the very common reactions that you see actually coming out of all trauma,
Mm,
Greg, right? It's
mm.
the tendency to shut down because it's just all so overwhelming. And then the shame can be so much that you feel the need to isolate. Yeah. And then these other reactions that are so predictable that they're a very common pattern, which gives me hope because then I can look at your experience and say, well, if Greg found his way through this, one of the hardest traumas that I can imagine, right? I mean, taking accidentally someone else's life, what a trauma. And so if you were able to navigate your way through this, then the same principles can be helpful for a lot of other people. Even though it may be a different story, it was still a blow. It was still an unexpected shock to their system that really threw them off at that time. And they've never really been the same since.
I can absolutely look at myself before the accident and then everything after. And I honestly do believe that everything I've done in my life, and I've done many things, was because I was trying to make a positive difference. I was being very creative, trying to make a positive difference in all sorts of ways. And so I was, again, very fortunate in that, interestingly enough, during college, yes, my classmates were very therapeutic, but I did see a very young, brand new counselor at the Student Health Services Center at Boston University, a very young man who, a little bit, just maybe 8 years older than me. He was not a Freudian or Jungian. He just listened and was great at reflecting back what he was hearing and helping me capture what I was going through. And I can't urge anyone enough. Find a therapist, find somebody who will listen, find somebody who accurately gets you and reflects back to you. It's extraordinarily helpful. And it was to me. I will add, I eventually found my way to Landmark Education, to the forum. And I heard all sorts of things about the forum used to be EST, for those of you who don't know, but you might remember EST back in the 70s. It was this big movement that the media labeled it a cult. It wasn't a cult, but anyway. And I found my way to the forum, and I had a number of very powerful insights, including facing the reality of what had happened. I think that I did my first forum approximately, I would say 12 years after the accident, in which there was a part of me that always had the accident in a kind of film loop that was going in my head, that was kind of always playing in the background of my life. And one of the big insights I had at the forum is that film loop is influencing me not only in a positive way but very negatively as well. And so I was able for the first time, and partly because the forum leader kind of smacked me in the face with it. He just basically, I was falling apart during the middle of the forum. I was crying and everything. Everybody's patting me on the back saying, are you okay, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And eventually the forum leader came up to me in a break and said, what's going on with you? And I killed my girlfriend. And, I'm crying and everything. And he said, stop. He says, is she dead? Really dead? I said, yeah, she's dead. How long has she been dead? Well, about 12 years. Okay. Is there anything you can do to change that fact? No, I can't. He goes, okay, time to get over it, which really kind of like, what? Get over it? What he meant was stop letting it undermine my function in the world. Stop letting it limit how I see relationships and how I approach others. Stop letting it box me in to this tiny little corridor of behaviors in the world. And so it was shocking. Yet it was absolutely the most perfect thing that it could have happened to me at that time, 12 years later.
Right? Like you are a living example of exactly what I write in my book. All of section 2 of my book on the biology of trauma is why does the body hold on to these things from the past? And you've perfectly described how, as long as there's no end to the story yet, the body stays in that place.
Yes.
And we keep reliving it as if it's present moment because there was never an end to the story. It wasn't something that happened in the past for our mind and our body. It's still present. It's
The
still
loop,
looping, the loop,
still
the loop.
looping.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes, I'm so glad you said that because theater school forces us to allow our emotions to come out. And so if you're trained as an actor in what's called the method teaches you that all your emotions live physically in your body. And that so when it comes time to do the show for the 100th time and break down or laugh or experience an emotion on stage in front of an audience, which is the most weird kind of situation you could be in, how do you make it authentic? They teach us go back to the physical sensations that you have had when you had the living emotion. And that's the technique. How do you recreate the physical sensation so that you can have the genuine emotion? So, as I said, it couldn't have been more perfect therapy for me than to go to theater school.
And we know this, like we actually have the research and the studies that show that theater specifically is one of the best treatments for trauma because of that. Like you're able to access your body and its emotions in a way that makes it safer than if you were just trying to process it in a therapy session.
Yes.
Your guard is
Yes.
up. You don't want to talk about it. Everything about that says, no, I don't even want to be here in therapy. And
Yes.
so when you go to theater, your guard is down and you're able to start moving things through. And Greg, this is such an important principle that you're sharing is just this movement, right? Otherwise we get
Yes.
stuck. We've got to be able to
Yes.
move through things, including move through those emotions.
Yes. And we used to say when we were in rehearsal, get up, just get up, walk, move your body, whatever you can do to stay loose. We would do yoga every day, everything we could to stay loose, to allow the body to just feel the sensations. And it works. It works. It's wonderful.
There's a lot of that I share with my audience here. If we really want to move through emotions, and specifically even when we're shut down because it's been so much, it's been too much, it's just like move your physical body. Don't just sit there, just move your physical body. And we've had so many stories, even in this group, of people who wake up and they're overwhelmed, right? Just like you woke up the next morning, Greg, and for a moment you forgot what had happened and then it hit you. And just that agony, and you want to curl up into a ball. You don't even want to get out of bed. You want to pull the covers over your head. You don't want to face anyone. And then it's like at that point, what do you do? And there's been even stories here in this group of they wake up, they feel that, and they're like, no, I need to move. I know that I need to move. I'm not going to dwell on the feelings right now. I'm not going to try to make them go away. I'm not avoiding them.
Mm.
But I also know the importance of moving my physical body to move through some of these emotions as well.
That was something that came up when you asked me earlier, how did it manifest itself in your body? I was always overweight, always overweight. I was not obese, not morbidly obese, but I was 15 to 20 pounds from shortly after I graduated college, because in college they want you lean and mean. But once I graduated from college, I started gaining weight. And I'm sure I was eating to make myself feel better and drinking and what have you. And then it wasn't until last year, last January, it's been 14 months now, I started intermittent fasting. It works for me. It totally works. And now I'm down to a much more healthy weight and my doctor's very happy with me. I'm very happy with me. But it manifested itself in being overweight for my most of my adult life.
Which was the same for me. And I got up to being 35 pounds over my ideal weight of when I was holding on to my trauma and not able to know how to move through it yet, or even know that that's what was causing it. So that's very, very common. And yet I can also look at how I was dealing with it. And as you were, Greg, like I was both overeating and over exercising.
Mm. Hmm.
And I found that physical exercise, I would try to get to the place where I could feel physical pain, physical exhaustion, because that was easier for me to feel than the emotional pain.
Yes.
Well, as we wrap up, Gregg, would love for you to reflect on just what high level, big picture, overall words of hope that you can give people, whether or not they've had your specific type of trauma or your specific type of grief and regret. What would be something that you could share with them for helping them have hope for the future?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I've been thinking hard about that. In the early days, all I felt was a frenzy of guilt and shame and a desperate need to try to do good stuff. And I actually thought probably about year 5 or 6, okay, this is my life. This is the way I'm going to feel. That desperate urge to do whatever I can to make a positive difference in the world. And it kept me up at nights and it was very dark. It was very dark for me. And what I can say now is by surrounding myself with people who at least listened and understood, didn't try to make it feel better, but just listened and understood and held me when I needed to be held. And researching where I was in the world, how I'm not alone, finding out that I'm not alone, and finding out that this is, as you said, these behaviors are normal to be expected. Finding out all of that really relieved me of feeling like I was in this tunnel, that I was going to be down this tunnel for the rest of my life. So I would say probably 10, 12 years on. But then again, it wasn't until 7 or 8 years ago when I formed the scholarship, that's when the burden really got lifted. I want to share with all of you, if you can find that thing that is not about making yourself feel better, in my opinion, this is the way I see it, but rather how the world can benefit and it not be about you, that you can just purely give of yourself and with no strings attached. That's for me where the burden got lifted. So there is hope. I live a happy life. I'm a happy person. Most people know me to be very upbeat and happy and positive. And so there is a future of happiness. There is a future of fulfillment. And there's a future of calm, of stillness, of groundedness. It's there. You can get to it. I'm not saying it's easy, but I believe you can get to it.
Thank you so much, Gregg. And again, I just so appreciate you being willing to show up and share your story. It's not an easy story to share. It is your story, but yet at the same time, it's bringing permission to other people to share aspects of their story that they have kept silent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Biology of Trauma podcast. Gregg's journey reminds us that even after a devastating experience, healing is possible. Joy is possible. Purpose is possible. Please share this episode with anyone that you think of that would benefit from this story. If you would like more resources about grief, regret, trauma in the body, I have resources for you in the show notes. I will start with my guide of steps to identify and heal trauma. This is a roadmap for identifying, do we have trauma stored in our body? What would that look like? What are the signs to look for? It's all in this roadmap, along with then the steps of what to do. What does that healing journey look like if you identify that, yes, I've got stored trauma in my body? The Biology of Trauma book. This is a book on how the body experiences and holds fear, pain, and overwhelm, and how to heal it. And at the time of this recording, you can join me in the Book Insiders Circle. This is where I will be doing monthly live readings and sharing resources only for those in the Insiders Circle. And if you go to the link in the show notes, you'll also see that not only are pre-orders available, but I've put together several $100 value bonuses that you can grab when you pre-order the book. If you are struggling with grief, regret, and shame, it's time to change. And it starts with laying your foundation for regulation, which happens in the 21-day journey. where through a specific sequence of somatic self-practices, I guide you through the essential sequence laid out in the roadmap. This has daily life classes to help keep you strong through these 21 days, and this is the fastest way that I have seen to shift your inner state, change your biology, and prepare you for the deeper work that does need to be done. If you are interested in related podcast episodes on grief, I'm going to point you back to episode 117 of Movement for Healing Stored Grief and Emotions with my friend Paul Denniston, founder of Grief Yoga. There's also a great YouTube video on my channel that's Unlocking Emotions with Dr. Joan Rosenberg. I am here to save you time and money by bringing you practical information that will help you accelerate the healing journey. So please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review if you have already subscribed. Your reviews and feedback are how I know how to improve this podcast, bring you great content, and help others find the information that can change their lives. I'm your host, Dr. Aimie. Until next episode, lots of love.